It started with a silence so thick it could have split the palace walls. Not a scream, not a whisper, just that eerie, suffocating calm before a royal storm. Then, all at once, Montecito shook with the kind of anger only betrayal can summon. Prince Harry's voice cut through the quiet like thunder. He did what? The phone was trembling in his hand, his knuckles white, his chest heaving. For a moment, even the California sunlight spilling through the windows seemed to freeze in midair. Across the ocean, thousands of miles away, the House of Windsor had just made a decision that would forever divide two brothers once bound by blood, grief, and duty. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Prince William had signed the order. Meghan Markle, once celebrated as the Duchess of Sussex, once the shining hope of a modern monarchy, was no longer to hold royal titles or privileges. The document was sealed, witnessed, and dispatched. No ceremony, no courtesy call, just quiet execution. It was a decision years in the making, and yet it hit Harry like an unexpected blow to the chest. A brother stripping away the last symbol of unity between them. And that's where our story begins. What drives one royal brother to destroy another? What truth was so dark, so deeply buried, that William finally had to act? In the next hour, we'll unravel how a family feud that began as whispers of jealousy spiraled into a full-scale royal crisis. We'll uncover the conversations that happened behind closed palace doors, the secret letters that vanished into private archives, and the moment Harry realized that love and loyalty can never coexist peacefully inside Buckingham's gilded cage. But first, let's go back to that morning. In Montecito, Meghan sat across from Harry in their living room. The air smelled faintly of lavender candles and fear. Her phone buzzed, then another buzz. Then a headline flashed across the screen. Breaking, Prince William initiates official process to remove Meghan Markle's royal titles. For a split second, she didn't move. Her perfectly poised face cracked just slightly, one corner of her mouth twitching as if disbelief itself had become physical. Harry leaned over her shoulder. His heart sank. He knew this day might come, but not like this. The press had been relentless, sure. The palace, distant. But William? The same brother who once held him after their mother's funeral? The same brother who promised they'd never let the crown destroy their humanity? It felt like that promise had been burned alive in a fireplace somewhere in Windsor. But across the Atlantic, William was not acting out of rage. He was acting out of resolve. For months, senior aides and advisors had been quietly pressing him. There were reports of private conversations, leaked memos, and growing discontent among Commonwealth officials who believed Meghan's continued use of royal titles, while actively criticizing the monarchy, was a constitutional embarrassment. Behind the grand portraits and marble corridors, the whispers had turned to warnings. The monarchy was bleeding credibility, and William, as heir to the throne, could no longer look away. Still, the decision didn't come easy. That morning, at Windsor Castle, William sat across from his father, King Charles, and his aunt, Princess Anne. The conversation lasted hours. Every word heavy, every silence heavier. Charles worried about optics, and, ever the pragmatist, said what everyone was thinking, but no one dared to speak. The monarchy cannot afford another scandal. William's voice was calm, but his hands told another story. They fidgeted, twisted the edge of a letter. An envelope Meghan herself had sent months earlier. That letter, insiders say, was the spark that reignited everything. Inside it were words meant only for the king, words that crossed a line of respect even in private correspondence. The contents remained sealed to this day, but the emotional fallout was immediate. Anne's eyes had hardened as she read it. Charles went pale. William folded it carefully, placed it on the table, and said in a low, measured tone, "Then we have no choice." It wasn't revenge. It was preservation. Back in Montecito, Meghan's reaction couldn't have been more different. The Hollywood sheen vanished. The public grace melted into panic. She began pacing, calling her team, demanding statements be drafted. Harry followed, silent at first, then trembling with anger. How could he do this? "He's my brother," he shouted. Meghan turned to him, eyes sharp. "Then make him undo it." But Harry knew better. He knew William. Once his brother made a decision, especially one this monumental, he never looked back. And so, While the world read headlines, the brothers' war shifted from cold silence to open emotional warfare. This wasn't just about titles anymore. It was about identity. It was about who held the moral authority to define what it meant to be royal. The monarchy had always been a house of contradictions. It preaches tradition, yet demands evolution. It celebrates love, yet fears individuality. It thrives on silence, but dies in scandal. And somehow, Harry and Meghan had touched every nerve of that fragile system. Now, the system was pushing back. And in that moment, something inside Harry cracked. Years of resentment, guilt, and suppressed pain flooded to the surface. He wasn't just angry that William had acted. He was furious that his brother had judged him. Was this William's revenge for Megxit? Was it punishment for abandoning the royal machine? Or was it something darker? A warning from a brother who had seen something Harry refused to face? Because make no mistake, William had reasons. Real reasons. And those reasons would soon come to light. Meanwhile, inside Buckingham, preparations were already underway. The Royal Communications Office was drafting a carefully worded statement. Her Royal Highness Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, will no longer hold formal royal privileges, titles, or representation roles within the Commonwealth. The statement would be brief, polished, emotionless, but its consequences would echo for generations. Meghan's team scrambled to contain the narrative. Phone calls to Netflix, to PR firms, to Hollywood producers. We need to control the story before they destroy it, she allegedly told one confidant. But in trying to control it, she only made it worse. Every call she made, every email she sent, every desperate word uttered into a phone line, someone was listening. And one of those conversations, according to insiders, would later find its way into the hands of the palace. The same palace that was already one step ahead. Because while Meghan was preparing to fight back through the media, William was preparing something far more devastating. A royal decree backed not just by his father, but by the entire Privy Council. For Harry, this was more than a political move. It was personal betrayal. For Meghan, it was public humiliation. For the monarchy, it was self-preservation. But for the world, it was about to become the most explosive royal story since Diana's infamous Panorama interview. What began as a family disagreement was now a full-scale crisis of image, loyalty, and survival. And here's the tragic irony. No one inside that golden cage seemed to notice that history was repeating itself. Once upon a time, another royal woman had been silenced, her truth dismissed, her humanity questioned. Diana's fate had been a warning, and now, her sons were unknowingly recreating the same tragedy in different colors. The stage was set, the lines drawn, the cameras rolling. Across continents, across generations, across the invisible web of royal tradition and public expectation, two brothers stood on opposite ends of the same broken bridge. One holding the weight of the crown, the other holding the weight of love, and both convinced the other had lost his way. But here's where it gets even darker. There were things William knew, things he had uncovered in recent months, that forced his hand. Things about Meghan's dealings, her communications, and her behind-the-scenes behavior that, if made public, could devastate the monarchy's integrity. He hadn't wanted to believe them. He'd fought to protect his brother from them. But when the truth finally landed on his desk in the form of a confidential report, he knew there was no turning back. He picked up his pen, signed the document, and sealed a royal fate. Meanwhile, in Montecito, Harry and Meghan's world was crumbling in real time. News vans outside, reporters calling nonstop. Their mansion, once a symbol of freedom, now felt like a gilded prison. Meghan wept quietly in her private study. Harry stormed through the hallway, muttering under his breath. He's finished. He'll regret this. But deep down, even he didn't believe that. Because this wasn't about winning or losing anymore. It was about survival. And survival, in the royal world, comes at a cost. The calls kept coming. From lawyers, from friends, from people offering to help. But each time Harry picked up the phone, his heart sank further. Everyone had an angle. Everyone wanted something. No one cared about the truth anymore. Only the story. The same story that once made them royal darlings had turned into a weapon aimed straight at their hearts. And the cruelest part? They had helped build it. By dawn, Harry sat alone in the garden. The Pacific breeze carried faint echoes of paparazzi cameras clicking beyond the gates. He stared into the distance, wondering how everything had unraveled so quickly. He thought of his mother, of the promises he and William had made, of the years they'd spent trying to shield each other from the same institution that now divided them. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this wasn't over. This was only the beginning. Because the moment William signed that order, a series of events was set in motion that would expose hidden alliances, betrayals, and secrets buried so deep they could tear down the monarchy's carefully crafted image forever. And in just a few days, one shocking revelation would emerge, one that would not only justify William's decision, but also make Harry question everything he thought he knew about the woman he married. It didn't begin with an argument. It began with a whisper. At first, it was nothing more than background noise. A few murmured doubts in the corridors of Buckingham Palace. A passing comment over tea at Clarence's house. A discreet conversation in one of the many offices that manage royal protocol. But in the royal world, whispers are never harmless. They're sparks waiting for air. Someone had started asking questions about Meghan's continued use of her royal titles. Why was the Duchess still styling herself with royal honorifics while living thousands of miles away and signing Hollywood contracts? Why was she still introducing herself as a working royal on global charity calls? And most importantly, why hadn't anyone stopped her yet? At first, William ignored it. He'd grown used to the chatter. The institution feeds on it. He thought it would fade, like it always did. But this time it didn't. Because the whispers were different. They carried weight. They carried evidence. In early spring, a senior aide handed William a small, cream-colored folder. Inside were notes, newspaper cuttings, and a few screenshots of Meghan's recent interviews. Each one seemed harmless on its own, but together they formed a pattern. A deliberate one. One comment here about archaic royal traditions. One podcast appearance there, criticizing old-world hierarchies. Then an endorsement where her royal title was used in marketing materials for a luxury brand collaboration. It was subtle, but clear. Meghan was capitalizing on the prestige of the crown while publicly condemning it. William closed the folder. His jaw tightened. He didn't say a word. The aide waited, shifting nervously. Finally, William looked up and asked quietly, "Who else has seen this?" "Just you, sir." The room fell silent. That silence would be the seed of a decision that would shake the monarchy to its core. But before we get there, let's step back. Because to understand why William acted, you need to understand the history he carried like a shadow. Ever since Diana's death, William had lived with an internal war. One side loyal to the public, the other desperate for privacy. He'd seen what media obsession could do to a family. He'd watched his mother cry behind palace curtains. He'd promised himself that he'd never let it happen again. Then came Meghan. Charismatic, modern, media-savvy. At first, William admired her. He even defended her privately. He wanted his brother to be happy. But slowly, little things began to shift. Leaks, staff resignations, emotional outbursts behind closed doors, allegations of bullying. The institution tried to contain it, but chaos has a way of leaking through the cracks. And that's when the whispers began again. Quietly at first, then louder. Advisors began comparing notes. Patterns emerged. Some saw Meghan as the victim of press cruelty. Others saw her as a calculated disruptor who understood the media game better than anyone before her. Then, an incident happened that William couldn't ignore. During a Commonwealth event held in early spring last year, Meghan's representative allegedly requested that her name be printed with full royal styling on the event brochure. It was a minor request. But the event was not sanctioned by the palace. To the public, it seemed harmless. To the monarchy, it was a red flag. Royal privileges come with boundaries. When those boundaries blur, the institution sees it as a threat. That same night, a late-night call came through to Kensington Palace. A private secretary told William that members of the Privy Council had expressed concern. "It's becoming a pattern," he said. William didn't respond right away. He simply stared out of his office window, the city lights reflecting off the glass. For a man raised to inherit the world's most scrutinized family, restraint was his armor. But restraint can also be a slow form of torture. Because while William maintained composure publicly, behind the scenes his patience was thinning. Each news story, each leaked interview, each subtle jab at the monarchy's coldness. He didn't just see a rebellious duchess. He saw history repeating itself. The same pattern that tore his parents apart. And through it all, Harry stood by Meghan, unwavering. His loyalty, while admirable, became a wound. A brother who once defended the crown now seemed to resent it. The divide grew quietly, like a crack beneath the marble floors of Buckingham. You couldn't see it from above, but one wrong step would make it collapse. Then came the letter, sent directly to King Charles. Written, reportedly, in Meghan's own hand. No one outside the royal inner circle knows its full content, but what leaked to the press months later painted a picture of confrontation. It was direct, blunt. Some said disrespectful. Others said brutally honest. She allegedly accused the monarchy of hypocrisy and manipulation, suggesting that her treatment had been racially and socially motivated. The letter found its way to William, and that was the moment the whispers turned into alarms. Because for the first time, it wasn't just about image, it was about insubordination. King Charles, diplomatic as ever, wanted to ignore it. Let it go, he told William. She's not worth the noise. But William disagreed. It's not about her, he said softly. It's about the crown. Those words carried centuries of weight. That night, William couldn't sleep. He walked the halls of Windsor, staring at portraits of monarchs past. His mother's face haunted him. The woman who'd taught him compassion but also suffered under a system that valued appearance over truth. He didn't want to become the villain, but he also knew that every generation of royals faces a moment where silence equals weakness. By dawn, he'd made a decision. He would begin an internal review of Meghan's royal privileges. Quietly, discreetly, without Harry's knowledge. But palace walls have ears. Within days, rumors began circulating among staff. A special review. A formal reassessment. The words were vague, but the meaning was clear. Something was coming. And soon, everyone would know. Across the ocean, in California, Harry sensed the tension before he knew the cause. Calls from palace contacts went unanswered. Invitations stopped arriving. Even his father's birthday message was reduced to a formal statement. When he confronted one of his old aides, the response chilled him. I can't say, sir, but something's in motion. Something, indeed. While Meghan prepared her next public appearance, royal legal teams were already compiling a dossier. A detailed timeline of every moment she had acted or spoken in ways that blurred the lines between royal duty and personal branding. It wasn't an attack, it was a defense mechanism. Because to the monarchy, perception is survival. And if Meghan's image became a liability, they would cut her off before she could cut them deeper. Behind closed doors, William reviewed the dossier with grim precision. His advisors hesitated to speak. They'd seen him angry before, but this was different. This was disappointment. He didn't see a sister-in-law anymore. He saw a risk to the very system he was born to protect. Still, he hesitated. Every line he read came with a memory. Harry's laughter, their mother's voice, the promises they'd made as boys. But duty is ruthless, and the higher the title, the heavier the cost. Weeks passed. Then, one evening, as rain poured over Windsor, William received a message. It came from a confidential source, someone who'd worked closely with Meghan and Harry. The message was short. There's more you need to know. Meet me. He went. Alone. The meeting took place in a small private office near Kensington Gardens. The source handed him an envelope, said only one sentence. Read this before it's too late. Inside was information that would later be referred to by insiders as the final push. We don't know what it contained. Some say it was financial evidence linking Meghan to questionable business deals using royal imagery. Others claim it contained transcripts of private calls that showed her intentions in a new, unsettling light. Whatever it was enough. By the time William returned to Windsor, the decision was sealed in his mind. But before he could act, the whispers grew louder, because someone had leaked news of his planned review to a tabloid. Suddenly, the private became public, and the world began speculating. Was William seeking revenge? Was the palace silencing Meghan? The narrative spun out of control before the first document was even signed. Harry called, dozens of times. William didn't answer. He couldn't. Not yet. Because the truth was, his heart was breaking even as his signature pen hovered over the first draft of what would become a royal decree. In Montecito, Meghan noticed the shift. The sudden coldness in her husband's voice. The clipped responses from palace contacts. the reporters lurking again outside their gates. The storm was gathering. The whispers were now shouts. And soon, the entire world would hear them. But what William didn't know, what no one could have known, was that his quiet act of duty was about to ignite an explosion that would threaten the monarchy's image, destroy his relationship with his brother, and expose secrets buried deep enough to topple anyone who touched them. Because in the royal family, truth is never clean. It's weaponized. And once unleashed, it destroys everything in its path. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It fell over Windsor Castle like a gray curtain, muting the world outside and wrapping the royal estate in a cold, echoing stillness. Inside, the atmosphere was even heavier. The kind of silence that doesn't comfort, it warns. Prince William arrived first. No entourage, no photographers, just a man who looked older than his years, carrying the invisible weight of history on his shoulders. His car pulled into the courtyard, tires hissing against the wet cobblestones. He stepped out, nodded to the guard, and walked inside without a word. He was there to end something. In the green drawing room, the air smelled faintly of oak polish and tension. King Charles sat near the window, papers spread before him, glasses balanced on the edge of his nose. Across from him, Princess Anne leaned against the mantel, arms crossed, watching the rain slide down the glass. It wasn't often that these three met without formality. No aides, no secretaries, just the bloodline. The topic of the meeting, Meghan Markle. Charles broke the silence first. "Are you certain about this, William?" His tone was calm but weary, the voice of a man who'd seen too many family fractures to count. William didn't answer immediately. He looked at his father, then at Anne. The look in his eyes wasn't anger, it was resolve. "It's not about her, father," he said finally. "It's about what she's doing to us." And gave a quiet, knowing nod. "Then you already know what must be done." Charles sighed. This isn't the first time a royal spouse has caused disruption. It's just the first time it's been televised. That line hung in the air. A flash of irony crossed William's face, because that was precisely the point. Meghan hadn't just broken rules. She'd rewritten the playbook. She wasn't like Wallis Simpson or Fergie, Duchess of York. She wasn't content with exile or quiet disgrace. She turned exile into a brand. And the brand was working. Her face was on magazine covers, her interviews breaking records, her documentaries pulling millions. But what disturbed the palace wasn't her success. It was her narrative. Every word she spoke painted the monarchy as an outdated, emotionally bankrupt institution. Every story she sold carried a royal coat of arms, whether real or symbolic. And the public was listening. William leaned forward, his voice low but sharp. "I've tolerated the criticism, the documentaries, the memoirs. But this," he tapped a folder on the table, "this is deliberate. She's using her royal association to attack the crown itself. We can't stay silent any longer." And studied him for a moment. "And what about your brother?" William looked away. For a moment, the facade cracked. And behind it, the pain of a man who still remembered chasing their mother's coffin down the street as the world watched. "He'll never forgive me," he said quietly. "But he'll understand one day." And didn't answer. She didn't need to. Duty doesn't wait for forgiveness. Charles rubbed his temples, exhaling deeply. "If we act," he said, "it must be absolute. No partial measures. Titles, privileges, representation, all of it." William nodded once. "I know." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky like distant drums. The castle lights flickered. It felt less like a family meeting and more like a council of war. For centuries, Windsor had hosted gatherings that shaped empires. But this one wasn't about land or treaties. It was about a single woman who'd managed to divide a royal family that once stood untouchable. And spoke next, her voice cold and steady. "You realize the risk, don't you? Public opinion is unpredictable. You'll be called cruel, controlling, misogynistic. You'll look like you're punishing her for speaking out." William didn't hesitate. "Let them say what they want. Silence has cost us more." Charles's eyes softened, almost regretful. "You sound like me when I was your age," he murmured. "Before I learned how quickly the press turns heroes into villains." William's jaw clenched. Maybe it's time the villain told his side of the story. And smirked slightly. "Well, you've certainly inherited Mother's spine." For a fleeting moment, they shared something close to laughter, brittle, fleeting, but human. Then reality snapped it away. Charles stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the rain. "You'll have my support," he said finally. "But it must be handled delicately. No leaks. No theatrics. We do this the royal way, clean, quiet, and final." William gave a small nod. "Then we start immediately." That's when and spoke again, her tone shifting. "Before you do," she said, "you should see this." She reached into her bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. Thick, embossed with the royal insignia. "It arrived this morning," she said, "from one of your former aides in communications. Apparently, Meghan's team reached out to a PR firm that's been representing foreign political interests. There's speculation of strategic influence." The word influence hit Charles like a stone. He turned sharply. "What kind of influence?" And didn't answer directly. "The kind that compromises credibility," she said simply. William opened the envelope. Inside was a printed email thread. Names redacted. Dates recent. The tone, unmistakably professional and damning. Whatever he read made his face harden instantly. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he placed the papers down and said, almost in a whisper, "It's worse than I thought." Anne's eyes narrowed. "So what now?" William stood. "Now," he said, "we finish what we started." Charles closed his folder. "Then it's decided." The room fell quiet again. The rain outside intensified, as if echoing the turmoil inside the castle walls. But even as they agreed to act, none of them realized the scale of what was about to unfold. Because outside Windsor, someone else had already caught wind of the meeting. A text message pinged on a staffer's phone, anonymous, encrypted, traced later to a California number. "Tell her," it read. "They've made their move." By the time William left the castle that evening, the leak had already begun. Meanwhile, across the ocean, Meghan was hosting a small dinner party with close friends and business partners. Glasses of wine clinked. Laughter filled the air. But beneath the surface, she was distracted, restless. Her phone was face down on the table, but her eyes kept flicking toward it. When it finally buzzed, she excused herself from the table. She stepped outside, into the soft California night. A single message awaited her. "They're meeting now. It's official." Her heart skipped. The calm expression faded, replaced by something colder, sharper. She stared out into the darkness for a long time before whispering, almost to herself, "So it begins." Inside Windsor, William was still awake. The decision weighed on him like armor he couldn't remove. He sat in his private study, pen in hand, drafting the first lines of what would become the royal decree. In accordance with the constitutional authority of the crown, and upon the recommendation of the Prince of Wales. He stopped, looked up, closed his eyes. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like loss. Because beneath the politics and procedure, beneath the dignity and duty, he was still just a brother. One who remembered the boy who used to sneak into his room at night to talk about their mother, their fears, their futures. And now, he was signing away the last thing that tied them together. He knew the fallout would be catastrophic. The press would devour it. Harry would rage. Meghan would retaliate. But for William, this was no longer about emotion. It was about control. The monarchy could survive scandal. It could survive rebellion. But it could not survive irrelevance. And in his mind, Meghan was turning it into just that, a global soap opera rather than a sacred institution. He finished the draft, folded it carefully, and locked it in the drawer of his desk. Then he stood by the window, watching the rain turn to mist over the palace gardens. That's when Princess Anne appeared in the doorway. "It's done then?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Good," she said. "Because tomorrow morning, the world will start guessing, and we'll need to be ready." William turned. "Tomorrow." She gave him a small, grim smile. Leaks travel faster than lightning these days. And she was right. By dawn, whispers were already circulating through London's press circles. "Something big is brewing," one reporter said. "Something about Meghan." Before breakfast, 3 different outlets were chasing the same lead, a high-level royal meeting at Windsor. And in Montecito, as Meghan scrolled through her phone, one headline caught her eye, a rumor that would confirm her worst fear. Palace insiders hint at title review for Duchess of Sussex. Her fingers froze mid-scroll. Her pulse quickened. She turned to Harry, who had just entered the room. "What is this?" she asked, voice trembling slightly. He glanced at the screen. "Read it once." Then again. His face went pale. They wouldn't, he said. But they would. And they already had. Because what began as a whisper inside Windsor's walls was now roaring across continents, shaking the foundations of a monarchy that had spent centuries hiding its cracks. And for the first time in modern royal history, the crown wasn't preparing for a scandal, it was creating one. The California sun rose over Montecito, golden and deceptive, as if it hadn't heard the whispers roaring across the Atlantic. But inside Meghan Markle's mansion, sunlight did little to warm the air. The atmosphere was icy, electric, the kind of tension that fills a room before a storm hits. Meghan sat at the breakfast bar, her phone in her hand, unread messages flooding her screen. The word Windsor appeared in half a dozen headlines, accompanied by phrases like Royal Review, Privy Council deliberations, and title suspension. Her stomach twisted. Her throat went dry. It wasn't rumor anymore. It was reality. For years, she had been dismissed as paranoid, told she was imagining conspiracies, exaggerating tension, fabricating slights. But now, the proof was staring her in the face. They were coming for her. The House of Windsor, with all its ancient weight and centuries-old grudges, had turned its gaze back toward her, and this time, it wasn't curiosity. It was retaliation. Harry entered the room, barefoot, wearing an old hoodie. He looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that comes not from lack of sleep, but from constant dread. He saw the phone on the counter before Meghan spoke a word. "It's true, isn't it?" she said quietly. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence was confirmation. Meghan's voice trembled as she continued. "They're stripping my titles. William's behind it." Harry closed his eyes. The guilt hit him first, then the anger. He wouldn't. He would, she snapped. And he has. She stood abruptly, pacing across the marble floor, her robe flowing behind her like a red flag. Her voice rose, not in hysteria, but in controlled fury. "After everything I've endured, after everything they did to me, they're doing this now." Harry tried to steady her. "Meg, let's just think before we..." She spun around. "Think. While they humiliate me in front of the world again. While the same family that froze me out now decides what I'm worth." Her words echoed through the open kitchen. Somewhere outside, a gardener paused, pretending not to hear. She gripped the counter with both hands. Her nails tapped against the stone. "No, not this time. They're not taking my name, my work, my identity. Not again." There was something frighteningly calm in her tone now. The stillness that comes when someone decides not to be a victim anymore. Harry's phone buzzed. He checked it. A message from one of his old aides. Official statement expected within 48 hours. His face drained of color. He showed it to Meghan. She stared at the screen, then back at him, her expression unreadable. "They think I'll stay quiet," she said finally. "They think I'll let them define me. But they don't know who they're dealing with." She turned on her heel and walked toward her private study, the one room in the house that felt like both command center and confessional. On the desk, her laptop, a glass of green juice, a stack of notes for her next podcast episode, all symbols of her post-royal reinvention. Now, all of it felt fragile. She opened her computer and began typing furiously, half notes, half thoughts, media narrative, female independence, institutional betrayal. Double standard. Her fingers flew across the keys, driven by adrenaline and fear. Harry followed her into the room, hesitant. "Meg, maybe we should wait. Let's talk to your PR team first." She looked up sharply. "We don't have time. By the time they call me, the world will already have an opinion. But if you say the wrong thing..." "The wrong thing?" she cut in, voice trembling. "Harry, they've been saying the wrong thing about me since the day I stepped into that palace." He didn't argue. He couldn't. He watched her, every movement sharp, controlled, deliberate. He'd seen her angry before, but this was different. This wasn't the rage of a scorned woman. It was the fear of someone whose identity was being erased in real time. She picked up her phone and started making calls. Her publicist, her lawyer, her agent. "We need a statement ready," she said. "Something strong. Something that reminds people who I am." Each person on the line gave her the same cautious answer. "Let's wait for the palace to confirm." Wait. That word again. The word she hated most. She'd waited her entire life, for opportunity, for acceptance, for validation. And every time she waited, the world moved on without her. Not this time. By noon, Harry had taken a long walk around the property, trying to clear his head. But the further he walked, the worse it got. His phone buzzed nonstop, old friends texting him, journalists fishing for comment, palace contacts sending warnings. He knew William's style. Calm, methodical. Once his brother set his mind on something, he never acted out of impulse. Which meant this wasn't anger. It was strategy. When he returned home, Meghan was on a video call with her PR team. The mood was tense. Words like narrative, optics, and counterattack floated through the air. Harry stopped in the doorway. Are we really doing this? Meghan turned toward him. We have to. They're painting me as some scheming outsider again. I'm not going to let them silence me. Silence you? He said bitterly. They're not even talking to you, Meg. They're just. She cut him off, her tone sharp as glass. That's the problem, Harry. They're not talking. They're acting. She stood and approached him slowly. Do you have any idea how humiliating it is? To have the entire world debate whether you deserve to be royal while your own husband's family sits back and watches. Harry looked at her, helpless. I didn't ask for this either. Her eyes softened briefly. I know, but you chose me, and now they're punishing you for it. That sentence hit him like a punch to the gut, because she was right, or at least, he believed she was. He had chosen her. Chosen love over legacy, freedom over formality. And yet here they were, trapped by the very choice that was supposed to set them free. He took her hands. We'll get through this. Together. For the first time that day, she smiled faintly. We'd better, she whispered. Because they're not going to stop. Outside, the paparazzi vans had begun to appear again. Long lenses peeking through the hedges. A familiar hum of helicopters in the distance. Montecito had become a royal battlefield. By mid-afternoon, headlines dominated every platform. Royal rift deepens. William's final straw. Sources claim Meghan furious over title decision. TV pundits speculated endlessly. Some called it justice. Others called it cruelty. But everyone called it news. In the midst of it all, Meghan received a call from a blocked number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Mrs. Markle, said a woman's voice. Calm, British professional. This is the Palace Communications Office. We wanted to inform you that an official statement will be released tomorrow morning. You will receive a courtesy copy beforehand. Courtesy, Meghan repeated, incredulous. You call this courtesy? The voice didn't respond. Then, after a pause, came a polite, rehearsed line. We wish you and your family peace during this time. Click. The line went dead. Meghan stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. Her hand trembled. Peace. The one word that had eluded her since the day she married into that family. Harry entered the room a few minutes later and saw her still standing there, pale and silent. What happened? He asked. They called, she said. They wanted to let me know they're taking everything away, politely. He felt his throat tighten. We can fight this. Her eyes flashed. Then we will. That evening, she made one last call, not to her team, but to someone she hadn't spoken to in months. A journalist she trusted. Someone who had always told her side of the story when no one else would. I have something for you, she said. But it stays off the record until I say otherwise. There was a pause. Then the voice on the other end replied, Understood. She smiled faintly, though her heart was pounding. They think they can silence me, she said. Let's see how quiet they stay once they hear what I have. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the royal machinery continued to turn. William received confirmation that the decree was ready for signature. All that remained was his final approval, and sent a brief message to his private phone. The crown is with you. He read it twice, then deleted it. As midnight approached in Montecito, Meghan sat on her balcony, watching the moonlight spill over the hills. The world below was quiet, too quiet. In the distance, Harry's voice drifted from another room as he spoke to his lawyers. She could hear fragments, timeline, process, legal rights. But her mind was elsewhere. If they were going to take everything from her, she'd make sure the world saw who they really were first. And somewhere, deep down, part of her wondered if that was exactly what William expected her to do. Lash out, confirm their suspicions, play the role of the defiant outsider once more. She didn't care. This time, she wasn't going to be controlled by palace scripts. She would write her own. It was 5:47 a.m. in Montecito when the silence shattered. A phone slammed against the wall. A glass broke. The sound echoed through the mansion like a gunshot. Prince Harry had lost control. The news had broken overnight. An official palace statement confirming the removal of Meghan Markle's royal titles and privileges. It was printed, sealed, and signed with William's name at the bottom. The words were cold, sterile, legal. Her Royal Highness Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, will henceforth cease to hold any royal privileges or duties associated with the British crown. The rest was just filler, but Harry didn't need to read it twice. Every word burned through him. He stood barefoot in the kitchen, face flushed, hands trembling. The printed statement lay on the counter, coffee spilled across it like blood. "They've humiliated her," he muttered, "in front of the whole world." Across the room, Meghan stood in silence. She'd been expecting it. She'd prepared for it. But no amount of preparation could dull the sting of public rejection, especially from the family she once called her own. Her face was calm, but her eyes betrayed her. Harry turned to her suddenly. "You knew this was coming. Why didn't you tell me?" Meghan blinked, startled. "I did tell you. I told you weeks ago this was happening. You just didn't want to believe me." Her tone wasn't cruel. It was exhausted. The voice of someone who'd been right too many times and found no satisfaction in it. Harry paced the room like a caged animal. His hands ran through his hair, tugging at the roots. He didn't even call. Not a message. Nothing. "My own brother." Meghan spoke softly. "He's not your brother anymore, Harry. He's an heir. And heirs don't apologize." That hit him hard. He froze mid-step, the weight of her words settling over him. All his life, William had been the steady one. The planner, the protector, the responsible royal. Harry had been the wild one. The one who strayed, then returned. The one who broke, then healed. But this time, he wasn't sure he could come back. The betrayal cut deeper than any headline or public mockery. It wasn't just a royal decree. It was a brother's signature on his wife's humiliation. His hands shook. He grabbed his phone and scrolled furiously, looking for William's contact. He pressed call. Straight to voicemail. He tried again. Voicemail. Again. And again. By the fifth attempt, he threw the phone against the counter, the screen cracking instantly. "He's ignoring me," he shouted. Meghan flinched, but didn't speak. She knew where this was headed. "After everything," Harry continued, pacing again. "After everything we went through. After losing Mom. After the promises. He's doing this. He's doing this." He slammed his hand on the counter. "He said we'd always protect each other. That no matter what the crown wanted, we'd stay brothers first." The room fell silent. Only the hum of the refrigerator filled the space between them. Meghan finally spoke. "He made his choice, Harry. And now we make ours." But Harry wasn't ready for choices. He wanted answers. He wanted to hear William's voice, to demand an explanation, to scream, to cry, to beg if he had to. He picked up another phone, the secure one used for private calls between royal family members. It still worked. For now, he dialed again. Ring, ring, click. A familiar voice answered, not William's. "This is Simon," said the calm tone of William's private secretary. Harry's pulse spiked. "Put him on. Now." "I'm afraid the Prince of Wales is unavailable, sir." "Unavailable?" Harry snapped. "You tell my brother he just ruined my wife's life, and he's unavailable?" "I'll pass on your message," the secretary said evenly. "Don't you dare hang up." But the line went dead. Harry stood frozen, phone still pressed to his ear. That was it. The final cut. He looked at Meghan. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her silence said everything. The phone rang again. This time from a British journalist he recognized. He ignored it. Then another call came in, then a third. The media had smelled blood. Meghan stepped closer. "Harry, you need to stay calm. They'll twist this. They'll make you look unstable." "Unstable," he barked. "They've taken everything from us. Our home, our name, our dignity. And I'm supposed to stay calm." "Anger helps them," she warned. But Harry couldn't stop. He stormed out of the kitchen and into his private study. The walls were lined with photos, him and William as boys, laughing in their school uniforms, Diana holding their hands at a polo match, the two brothers walking behind their mother's coffin. He stared at the photos, his reflection caught in the glass. "You promised," he whispered to the younger William staring back. "You promised we'd never become them." His voice cracked. Then, like a switch flipping, the sadness morphed back into fury. He swept the photos off the shelf. Frames shattered across the floor. Meghan rushed in. "Harry." He turned, eyes red. He's turned his back on me, Meg. On us. She reached for his arm. Then let's hit back. He hesitated. What do you mean? Her expression was cold now, almost strategic. We've tried silence. We've tried diplomacy. It doesn't work. They want war. Let's give them one. Harry's jaw tightened. You're talking about going public. I'm talking about telling the truth, she said. Everything. No more hiding. No more protecting their image while they destroy ours. Harry shook his head. That'll just make things worse. Worse? She said incredulously. They've already done their worst. She grabbed his hand. You have nothing left to lose, Harry. But you have something they don't, freedom. He looked into her eyes. They were fierce, unyielding. And for a brief moment, he believed her. Maybe they could take back control. He exhaled. Okay, what do we do? She smiled faintly. Not a happy smile, but the kind a soldier gives before battle. We go on camera. We tell our side. We don't hold back this time. Harry hesitated. He imagined the headlines, the backlash, the late-night talk shows mocking them. But then he pictured William's signature on that decree, and his hesitation evaporated. Fine, he said. Let's do it. Within an hour, Meghan's media team was on a conference call, preparing statements, reaching out to sympathetic outlets. Harry sat nearby, restless, his hands shaking from adrenaline. Make sure they understand, he told them. This isn't revenge. It's justice. But justice and revenge are separated by a thin, invisible thread, and Harry was already walking it. The interview was scheduled within 24 hours. But before it could even be filmed, something else happened. A new story broke. It came from a royal insider, anonymous, well-placed, and armed with details that had never been made public. The leak claimed that Meghan's title removal wasn't about personal spite, but national integrity. It alleged that documents and communications had raised serious ethical questions within the monarchy. In other words, this wasn't punishment. It was protection. Harry read the article, his face turning white. What the hell is this? He whispered. Meghan's expression hardened. They're trying to justify it. They're building their narrative before ours even airs. That's when Harry snapped again. He grabbed his phone, dialing William one more time. This time, it rang longer. Then, finally, a voice. But not William's. Harry, said a familiar tone. Calm, firm, controlled. It was their father. Don't do anything rash, King Charles said. There are things you don't understand. Things I don't understand. Harry said, his voice trembling. You just let him destroy us. William acted for the good of the institution. Charles replied quietly. He's trying to protect the monarchy. Harry laughed bitterly. And who's protecting me? There was silence. Then Charles spoke, voice soft and tired. You chose a different path, son. The line went dead. Harry stood there, shaking, staring at the phone as if it had betrayed him too. He turned to Meghan. They've all turned their backs on me. Every single one of them. Meghan stepped forward, her tone gentle but resolute. Then let's remind them who we are. Let's make them wish they'd never crossed us. Harry didn't answer. He just nodded, once. Outside, the California sky darkened. Cameras were already setting up on the street beyond their gates. Reporters called it the calm before the storm. But inside, the storm had already begun. And across the ocean, in Buckingham Palace, William received word that his brother was preparing a televised response. He stared at the report, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he said to his aide, let him speak. Sometimes the truth reveals itself faster when the wrong person tells it. No one in the room knew exactly what he meant, but William did. Because while Harry was ready to speak his truth to the world, the real truth, the one William had discovered, hadn't yet been revealed. And when it did, it would turn everything upside down. It started with a single headline. Then came 1,000 more. By dawn, the story had spread like wildfire. Every front page, every push notification, every tabloid cover across London, New York, and Sydney screamed the same words in bold. Prince William strips Meghan Markle of royal titles. It wasn't just a scandal. It was a spectacle. News anchors spoke with hushed awe. Talk show hosts turned it into morning banter. Social media ignited like a forest fire in high wind. Some hashtags defended Meghan as a modern queen betrayed by an outdated system. Others praised William as the protector of royal integrity. It wasn't a royal story anymore. It was global entertainment. And Meghan Markle knew exactly how to play entertainment. By 8 a.m., her PR team was on full alert. Every line, every image, every public statement would have to be perfectly timed. They had two goals: control the narrative and make Meghan the victim again. Inside her Montecito home, she sat in front of her makeup mirror, scrolling through a feed of chaos. Reporters swarmed the gate. Drone shots hovered over the property. "Don't panic," her publicist said over speakerphone. "We control the message. You have the emotional advantage. Use it." Meghan looked up at her reflection. Her eyes were tired, but her posture was flawless. "The emotional advantage," she repeated softly, almost to herself. That's what they called Diana's interviews too. She wasn't wrong. Because in the eyes of the world, emotion always beats hierarchy. Harry walked in mid-call, holding his phone. "The BBC just called again. They want to know if we'll be releasing a joint statement." Meghan didn't hesitate. "We'll release our own." Her publicist interrupted. "We should wait until the official royal announcement is broadcast. If we go too early, they'll say you're reactionary." Meghan's lips curved slightly. "Let them. I'd rather be reactionary than invisible." She ended the call and stood, moving to the window where sunlight spilled across the floor like a spotlight. "If they want war," she said, "they've picked the wrong woman." Harry hesitated. "Meg." She turned to him. "What?" "You're not fighting just William," he said quietly. "You're fighting the system. You know what that does to people." Her eyes softened. "It already did it to me." Meanwhile, across the ocean, inside Buckingham Palace, the mood was the opposite of Montecito's chaos. The corridors were calm, controlled. Every detail of the official statement was being managed with surgical precision. William sat at a long oak table surrounded by advisors. Before him lay printed reports tracking global reactions. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes flickered over each headline like someone studying the aftermath of a storm he'd predicted. "Social response is divided," one aide reported. "Public sympathy for the Duchess remains high, but support for the monarchy has surged among traditionalists." William nodded slightly. "That was expected." Another aide added, "The Sussex camp has not released a counter-statement yet, but we're hearing murmurs that she's preparing a video address." At that, William's jaw tightened. "Of course she is." He stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the rain-damp courtyard below. "She'll use emotion. She always does." Charles entered moments later, his expression weary. "It's begun," he said simply. William turned. "The press." Charles nodded. "And the storm." William sighed, his tone steady but heavy. "It had to happen eventually." Charles stepped closer. "Are you prepared for the fallout?" "I'm not sure anyone can be," William replied. "But at least the crown will stand." The king placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "It's not the crown I'm worried about," he said softly. "It's the family." William didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. Back in California, Meghan's war room had come to life. Phones buzzed nonstop. Laptops hummed. Screens displayed trending hashtags. Every post, every comment, every mention was tracked. Her strategist, a sharp, young consultant from Los Angeles, leaned forward. "We have two options. Option 1, calm and grace. You take the high road, issue a short statement about focusing on your family and privacy." Meghan arched an eyebrow. "And option 2? "Option 2, he said, "we go on the offensive. Emotional, bold. You reclaim the narrative. Talk about being silenced, erased, and punished for speaking truth." Harry frowned. "That'll just make them think we're starting another media circus." Meghan didn't blink. "The circus is already here. We just decide whether we perform in it or let them sell tickets without us." The strategist smiled faintly. "Option 2 then." Within hours, a film crew discreetly arrived at the estate. Not a major network, but a trusted independent production team Meghan had used before. The setup was simple: one camera, one chair, one microphone. Meghan wanted intimacy, vulnerability. She wanted control. She sat down in front of the camera, took a deep breath, and looked straight into the lens. "They told me silence was dignity," she began softly. "That I should never respond. That my value depended on staying quiet while others told my story. But silence isn't dignity. It's surrender." Her tone was calm but cutting. Each word carefully measured, each pause deliberate. She spoke about love, betrayal, and double standards. About how women who challenge institutions are labeled difficult ambitious, or ungrateful. She painted a picture not just of a woman wronged, but of a system afraid of her voice. By the time the clip aired, leaked, of course, it was already viral. Millions of views in hours. Twitter exploded. YouTube reaction channels dissected every line. Supporters hailed her as brave. Critics accused her of manipulative timing. And through it all, William said nothing. He didn't need to. The palace's silence was its own form of communication, cold, disciplined, powerful. But not everyone inside Buckingham agreed with his approach. Some urged a rebuttal, others feared losing control of the narrative. One aide even suggested releasing footage of William's meeting with the king to show transparency. William shut it down instantly. "We don't justify truth," he said quietly. "We uphold it." Still, he watched the clip. Every second, every word, and somewhere between her calm delivery and her quiet tears, he recognized something terrifying. She was winning hearts again. Across the world, sympathy surged. Commentators began comparing Meghan to Diana. The idea horrified the palace. That night, William called a private advisor, someone who had handled royal crises for decades. "If she's already controlling the narrative," William asked, "how do we change it without looking cruel?" The advisor's answer was short and strategic. "You don't. You wait. Wait. She'll overplay her hand," the advisor said. "They always do." William said nothing, but deep down, he feared the man might be wrong this time. Because Meghan wasn't just reacting, she was orchestrating. Her team released unseen photos of her family life, carefully curated to show normalcy and warmth. Meghan in the garden with the kids, Meghan reading under a tree, Harry laughing in the background. The message was clear: she was human, and the royals were cold. Public sympathy spiked again. But then, cracks began to show. A few journalists who had once championed her started asking subtle, skeptical questions. Why now? Why the perfectly lit footage? Why release personal photos at the exact moment of her public humiliation? It was too polished, too planned. The same media she had mastered was starting to sense performance instead of pain. And across the ocean, William noticed. "Let it play out," he told his team. "The truth has a strange way of finding its audience." Meanwhile, Harry was struggling. He'd watched the interview too, and though he supported her, something inside him twisted uneasily. He recognized the tone, the pauses, the deliberate vulnerability. He'd seen that same performance in palace press rooms, the same craft of turning emotion into message. Late that night, he found Meghan on the patio, laptop open, reading comments. "They love you," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "They should." He hesitated. "Are you sure this is the right way?" She looked up. "Harry, the only wrong way is silence." He nodded, but he didn't feel peace. Because beneath the surface, the media war wasn't just about public opinion. It was about control. And for the first time in their marriage, Harry began to wonder if they were fighting for truth or just fighting to win. Back in London, William received a private memo marked confidential. It contained information from a palace source about new leaks allegedly tied to Meghan's staff. Emails, messages, internal documents. His aide read the first line aloud, then stopped. William took the paper himself. His expression darkened. "Where did this come from?" he asked. "An insider," the aide replied. "They say there's more. A lot more." William folded the paper and said, almost to himself, "Then the time for silence is ending." Because hidden inside those files was something even the media hadn't touched yet. Evidence that could change the entire narrative of who had really betrayed whom. It arrived in an unmarked envelope. No royal seal. No return address. Just a plain white packet slid under the door of Kensington Palace's private office in the early morning hours. At first, security thought it was a prank. But when the head of William's communications team picked it up and saw the handwriting, neat, deliberate, unmistakably formal, he froze. On the front, written in bold black ink, "For the attention of His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, confidential." He carried it straight to William. The prince was alone in his study, sipping black coffee and staring at a muted television replaying Meghan's interview. Her voice, calm, articulate, wounded, echoed faintly through the room. Silence isn't dignity. It's surrender. He'd memorized that line. He turned off the screen and looked up as the aide entered, envelope in hand. "Sir," The man said quietly, "This just came in. No sender." William's brow furrowed. "No sender?" "None, sir. It was found at the door before dawn." He took the envelope, studied it, then opened it carefully. Inside was a thick stack of papers. Internal memos, printed screenshots, bank records, and what looked like copies of private correspondence between Meghan's former staff and outside contacts. For several minutes, the only sound in the room was the soft shuffle of paper. Then William's voice, low, controlled, deadly calm. "Where did this come from?" The aide hesitated. "We're still tracing it, sir. But if it's authentic." "It's dynamite," William finished. Because this wasn't gossip. It wasn't hearsay. It was documentation. And it painted a very different picture of what had been happening behind the scenes in Montecito. Emails allegedly showing Meghan's staff coordinating media appearances without royal clearance. Notes referencing strategic narrative alignment with journalists. Mentions of leveraging royal heritage for branding credibility. But one line in particular made William's blood run cold.